We always serve Seva tea on the podcast. It's my favorite tea. You can get it at Seva Tea Lounge, which is inside Kavala Wellness in Long Beach, or on Etsy. And you can find out more information on Instagram at Seva Tea Lounge. She has so many different teas that she's curated. I have some here that I use for the podcast. I have Sacred Heart, Rama Tulsi, and Lucid Dreaming, which is a really fun one to have. But she has so many different ones. And because she's an Ayurvedic practitioner, she uses that as inspiration for her teas. Go check it out. We have the info in the bio below. Welcome to Healing Highs with Lara, where we talk about the highlights and serendipitous moments of our healing journeys. I'm Lara, and I'm happy to introduce my guest today. She is an embodied mindfulness coach and mentor and helps others cultivate self-love through yoga and meditation. Welcome, Marlene Martin.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. I love that your focus is self-love. I feel like that is, if not the most important, one of the most important things that we can expand and heal for ourselves. When we work on that and when we kind of amplify that, so much changes for us.
Yeah, it shifts everything.
Yeah. How do you define or experience self-love?
So for me, self-love is taking the time in my day to give myself what I need. So it begins early in the day at sunrise with just sitting with a cup of tea and watching the sunrise and listening to beautiful music or a guided meditation. And in that time, I allow myself whatever it is I need. So I don't give myself these restrictions, which I did for a long time. For a long time, I would live in this really rigid idea of how I was going to give myself what I needed. It had to be sitting in a specific place, facing a specific direction, doing a specific type of breathing. But what I've learned is that each one of us has something that feeds us. And then, so for me, that self-love begins with just the sunrise. And so if I need to, fiddle with my goddess cards, or if I need to play with my nails, or if I take my eyes off the sunrise, anything like that where I can stare at a candle, I just give myself what I need in that first half an hour of the day. And then, of course, in other ways, it shows up in the way I feed myself. I really nourish myself with food. I used to be a vegan chef, so I love food and I love to feed others. But what I was realizing is that I was more concerned with feeding others and not with nourishing myself. So now I really make it a priority to make sure I have the things that make me happy, that nourish me. And of course, there's beautiful baths and taking long baths or going to bed early or cuddling with my loved one. These are all ways that I show myself self-love. And there's more, but I'm sure that you'll ask me more good questions. Yeah.
No, that's so great. And I always love what you said about it showing up how it does for us and not this certain way. That might work for some, but others of us need that flexibility and not to feel like, I have to be exactly perfect in my posture. And no, like you said, nail, just whatever you're feeling you need in that moment.
Yeah.
It's a nice freeing thing to hear. That we can show up in any way.
Yes, I would say that a big part of my self-love routine is compassion. And that would be the most difficult practice that I do, but also the most healing. So in my 24 years of practicing yoga and meditation, not that I'm keeping track, but like I said, I used to be really rigid and it has to be this way and it has to be that way. And I found that the critical voice inside my head just got stronger and stronger. And when when I started to apply compassion, which a lot of times I do by placing my left hand over my heart or placing my right hand over my left hand over my heart. And I just say hey, it's okay if your mind is busy today. It's okay if you don't feel like sitting here watching the sunrise. It's okay if we do it different today. There's a lot of just letting myself know that it's okay where I'm at in that moment, and that I can give myself what I need in that moment. So that's a big part of it. Compassion is a big part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always love hearing what brought you to this space. Like you said, 24 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so much has evolved. But even before that, what brought you to begin your healing journey, or all of this?
Well, I really want to say that I feel like I've been on my healing journey since I was 5.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is that as a 5-year-old, I just noticed that my home life and my mom weren't the same as other moms, and wasn't the same as other kids, you know, in my school or in my neighborhood. And so I was always sort of hyper aware of the differences and how I wanted to make it better. But I do have the most interesting story I want to tell you.
Yeah.
And that is that back when I was an elementary school teacher in 1999, I was a second grade teacher, and the first grade teacher was a very sweet, very gentle woman. And one day when we were both doing after school supervision, she came up to me and she had her little hands folded and she goes, you know, I've been thinking about taking this introduction to yoga class at East LA College, City College, and I was wondering, do you want to go with me? It's right after school, right after we get off of work, and we can go and then we can come back here and, you know, we can go our separate ways. And I was like, wow, I've been really interested in yoga. I'd love to do that with you. It was so like out of the blue that I was interested in yoga. Her and I had never talked about this, and she seemed so like offstand, just like, oh, I don't know if I want to ask you. This seems kind of weird. And I was like, it's not weird at all. This is great. So that was my first dipping my toes in what yoga was, and it was a great course. Like, we really learned about the 8 limbs of yoga, and we learned about meditation, and the poses were sort of secondary, but we did learn about yoga poses. And 1999, it was the first time I ever did any yoga, and my life has, I truly believe, because of yoga and meditation, has completely transformed multiple times, more times than I can count, but in really big ways. Like, yoga was the catharsis, along with therapy, was the catharsis for me leaving an abusive 12-year relationship. It gave me the strength to really see who I was, and that I deserved to be treated with love and with kindness the way that I treated people. And so it gave me that perspective, that clarity that I didn't have before I started practicing yoga. So it all started at a little private Montessori school in Downey, California, with just 2 teachers jumping in our cars at the end of the day and driving down to East LA City College. You know, yeah. So to me, that's the turning point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you said from that place you have had so many pivotal transformational moments. Can you share?
Wow.
I know, like, can you,
so many.
can you pick 1 or 2?
Well, you know, what I want to say is that they're all connected to self-love.
And I was going to say, even what you're talking about here feels like this, like, embarking on just this expansion of self-love.
Yeah, so definitely I had no clue that I was supposed to love myself. I had always been taught, as a devout Catholic, growing up, I had always been taught that it's selfish, self-centered, and bad for you to focus on yourself and give yourself what you need. The pattern that I was given by my dad, who is a wonderful spirit and was a wonderful human being, not perfect, but wonderful, was that you gave it all until you were empty. Wow. And then you just had to figure out how to fill back up again before somebody needed you again. And so that's how I lived my whole life, was just give everything. I'm not important. I don't matter. And I had lots of examples of that in my grandmother and in other family members and church members growing up. And so, but at the same time, this little gift of going to take a little course on the introduction of yoga was a gift. And going to the gym to go so I could go to yoga class was a gift. And then that turned into taking a writing class and meeting other writers, and that was a gift, getting to see myself reflected by others who saw who I really was, because I was beginning to see myself. And I really vehemently believe that if we are going to see who we truly are, that we must cultivate self-love, that's what allows us.
Yeah.
It's loving ourselves and giving ourselves what we need and putting ourselves first, which still can feel so weird if you grew up watching people give everything they had and really emptying their cups fully. But it does become more and more natural the more I practice it. So the more I practice it, the more I expand. And the more I expand, the more I understand. And the more I understand about myself, the more I understand about others.
Yeah.
The more I understand about relationships, the more I understand about the world. And the more compassion I show myself, the more compassion I have for others, even as I end relationships that I love, people that I love, but the relationship is just not healthy. Or even as I put boundaries down in relationships, like with my family members. Like in the past, how my boundary was received really affected me. So if I said to my Mom, I'm going to go home now. I've been here long enough. I need to go home. And her reaction to me would completely change how I felt about myself, about the choice I had made. I somehow knew the boundary was right to put down for my own well-being, but I felt horrible doing it. And now I have found that it's so much easier because I've spent so much time cultivating self-love and forgiveness, self-forgiveness and compassion. That's, again, number one for me, self-compassion. Because I've been practicing that now consistently, when I say to my mom, hey Mom, it's time for me to head home. I have some things to do. And she'll be like, you have to go? And I'll be like, yeah, I do. So there's no longer that weight of, you're my number one priority, and it's my job to please you and make you happy.
Right.
It's now, hey, we had this great time together, and it's time for me to go.
Yeah.
And however she responds, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, because I still love her, and I know that I'm gonna see her again, and I'm gonna spend time with her. But how she responds no longer hurts. It no longer hurts because she no longer defines my self-worth.
Yes.
She no longer defines how I love myself. So therefore, like, our relationship has gotten the more I love myself, the better my relationship is with my mom, with my sister, with my husband, with my children. And it doesn't matter what state that relationship is in, whether we're in a hard place and we're going through a difficult time, a conflict, a disagreement, or we're in a good place. I still feel so good sending them love and setting my boundaries. It's so boundaries.
I was going to say, boundaries is such a form of self-love. It's so challenging for most of us. And being able to know our own boundaries, our boundaries for others, and then how to communicate them so that we feel they're heard and we feel good about how we communicate. All of that is I feel like a big marker in healing, right?
It's
like,
a dance.
I'm doing it better. And like, I got it, you know, and I do it and it works. And like you said, now I feel better. My relationships are better. I'm showing up better. Yeah.
I enjoy the time that I'm just using my mom as an example. This is changing my life across the board. This is changing the people that I work with. This is changing the places that I work. This is for once me putting myself first, but in compassion and love, still having great love for those other people, whoever they are, but also just making sure I have what I need, not putting myself on the back burner. That has made spending time with my mom, with my sister, with my nephew, with my children, with my husband, it's just, everything is sweeter because it's just easier to say, all right, sweetie, I'm gonna go now. And I love you. And I think I'm gonna skip that trip on Saturday. And you guys go ahead and go and have a good day. Oh, it's not gonna be the same without you. That's okay. I'll catch the next one. I'm just not feeling up to it this time. And it's no longer defines the type of daughter I am.
Right.
I get to show up for me.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Absolutely. Because then if you went on that trip, now you have resentment towards yourself, towards them.
The whole time.
You're exhausted. You're upset.
It compiles and it chips away at your well-being. Mm-hmm. It's really about well-being. I want to share with you my brand new mantra, and let me tell you why I developed it. I am always late. I'm a Latina, specifically Cuban. We always arrive, Cuban time, we always arrive an hour and a half to 2 hours late. My mom's like a good 2 to 3 hours late. My dad had sort of the same anxiety I do, so we're like 15 minutes to 30 minutes late. I was going to
say, typically around me and my friends and family, that's 15.
Yeah, right? But it can be like a large range.
Yeah.
But I really don't like being late. It brings like high anxiety. So I'll drive like a bat out of hell to get somewhere on time. So I've decided that regardless of the time that I leave my home, I will drive safely, and the thing that keeps me safe is to continuously repeat, my health and well-being are more important than anything else. My health and well-being are more important than anything else. And that really slows me down.
Yeah.
And I don't need to switch lanes, and I don't need to speed through that yellow light. Like, I can drive, okay, I'm going to be 5 minutes. My acupuncturist is really not going to cancel my session.
Right. It'll be okay.
Because I'm 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
In fact, she's happy to see me no matter when I show up.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think that's really powerful for a lot of people, because we, again, are putting on like the other person, which, yes, we want to respect them and their time,
yes, absolutely,
but not at the risk of our own safety of driving and, like you said, well-being in general.
I'm from LA. I'm from East LA, and we have a game called Create a Lane, because on East LA streets, there's always like a little side part of the street where you normally would make a right? And so you just sneak in there, and when the light turns green, you just floor it and you go. And that's called Create a Lane. And I've been playing that since I was 18, and I refuse to create a lane for any reason.
No more.
No more creating a lane, no more running red lights, no more speeding.
Yeah.
Not because it's not fun, or not because I don't want to be on time, but because my health and my well-being are more important than anything else.
That's beautiful. I think when you say something like that, and it can help so many people to take that mantra for themselves or build their own, that kind of leads me into what I wanted to ask you about helping others. What, with all of this, then made you want to commit to healing to help others?
Well, actually, I was committed to healing and helping others before I was ever committed to myself.
Oh, yeah.
I've been working, with kids since I was 16. I just up and volunteered at the after-school program when I was 16, and I never stopped. I never stopped volunteering for programs. I never stopped being in the service industry, probably every single job I've ever had, human resources, school teacher, interventionist, and play therapist with children, parenting coach, yoga teacher, meditation teacher. They're all focused on helping others, because let's be straight. No, seriously, it's way easier to help others than to help yourself.
Yeah.
So it was a way for me to sort of escape.
Yeah, avoid
looking inward and loving myself. If I could just love someone else, and if they said thank you, my heart was full. I was always looking for my self-worth from outside my body, from external circumstances, people, bosses. I have a slew of bosses who I looked for their approval. And in every single situation, the one thing I realized about them was that they didn't see who I really was, or what my worth really was.
Right.
And it goes way back to my very first boss. It's not like, the last boss I had, or the one before that. It's all of them that I was searching for approval and acceptance, but I wasn't giving it to myself. So it always failed, because if you don't give it to yourself, you're not going to get it from others. So what led me to help others was that. It was just I wanted other people to not feel the pain I had felt. And that's terrific. That's beautiful. But what I wasn't realizing was that I wasn't loving myself, being compassionate, kind, and patient with myself in the same exact way that I was willing to be for everybody else.
Yeah.
But that's how I started that. And of course, first I wanted to be a teacher because teachers had helped me as a child.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to work with children because as a child I felt misunderstood. And so I wanted children to feel understood.
Yeah.
And as a parent, I felt misunderstood by professionals. Having a son who's neurodivergent, I felt really misunderstood. So I wanted to become a professional who understood parents and helped them feel understood.
Yeah.
And then I became a yoga teacher because yoga totally transformed my life. So I wanted to share that with everybody. And then I became an embodied mindfulness coach because an embodied mindfulness coach had helped me start to develop the self-worth and the authority within me, the self-authority to be able to quit my job and to leave the boss who was nice enough but just didn't see my true worth.
Yeah.
Just didn't see it. And so that's when I started working privately with clients, and that's what I do now. And at that point, I was working a lot on self-love and self-compassion, and I had a breakthrough, a full breakthrough on retreat, on meditation retreat with my Embodied Mindfulness School. While I was getting my certification, I had this heart-opening, heart-cracking open experience of just sitting in meditation and just crying and feeling totally accepted and loved by me.
Oh, beautiful.
That was my first time.
Wow.
I had started it, but it's work that's never done. So from that moment on in 2020, sorry, 20 years later.
2020 is like a time warp.
In 2019, actually. It happened late 2019, so right before 2020.
Yeah.
From that moment until now, my self-love has increased because of my practices. Because I experienced it there in retreat, I was able to refer back to it. And I was able to refer back to the compassion that just suddenly flooded from my heart. Like, it's okay to sit the way you sit, and it's okay to breathe the way you do breathe, and it's okay to meditate the way you meditate, and it's okay if your mind is busy today. Or if it felt so good. It was like everything was okay in those moments, those 72 hours of being on retreat. I was just perfect exactly as I was.
So much self-acceptance.
Which is what I've been searching for my whole life, isn't it?
Lovely.
Since I was that little girl at 5, just wanted to be seen and loved for who I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I visit all those little versions of me in meditation. I visit the 2-year-old that can't stop crying, and I visit the newborn that went through a really, really traumatic childbirth that I didn't even realize until last year. Or the year before that, maybe 2 years ago, I realized my mom's always talked about her birth story and how traumatic it was for her.
Mm-hmm.
And one day in meditation, I was meditating on my mom and what it must have been like for her, you know, growing up and really trying to connect with her. And I had this vision of, wait a minute, this birth story is my story too. Mm-hmm. I was in a NICU. I was basically in a coma for the first 4 days of my life. That was traumatic. I know childhood development.
Yeah.
I know that's traumatic. And so I started to hold my newborn and in meditation. And she's got a name. Her name is, recently it changed. It's usually Little Bug because I was so little. Yeah. I was about 5 pounds when I was born. And so Little Bug, she suddenly turned into Little Ladybug. And the other one is Sweet Pea. I call her Sweet Pea. And usually when she comes is when I'm feeling dread. When she needs me to hold her, it's when I feel dread or just this like unspoken fear. There are no words. I don't know where it's coming from. And so I hold the baby. And so all those versions of me, 5, 7, even 15,
Yeah.
and even 20. Sometimes my 20-year-old comes up and she's very opinionated. And we have a conversation and it's like, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to have big emotions.
Absolutely.
And so that's really, really cultivated my self-love practice to like see and receive and love each part of myself. I really love that. I don't even remember the question, but there you go.
Honestly, I know I love that when that happens. You're like, I like this. However we came to that.
Oh, thank you.
How, because I kind of want to ask you more about the embodied mindfulness.
Yeah.
How would you, like, what does that entail?
Oh, God, I love embodied mindfulness. So, what it entails, and I had, for years, I've had a hard time explaining it, and recently it just clicked. And the sort of little, what is it called? The little bite that I want to give you before I talk to you about the process.
Amuse-bouche.
The amuse-bouche is that, and it just came to me Friday as I was sitting with a friend at a coffee shop. There are so many things that we know up here.
Yeah.
Like, I know I don't want to yell at my mom. I know that I want to stay present and be 52 in my body and feel my body as I speak my words, and I want to show up in integrity and authenticity. Like, that's who I want. I know this. I know this about myself. And I also know the things that trigger me. And I also know that when I don't rest or eat or drink enough water, that I don't feel my best. I know all these things. It's up here.
Right.
But inner wisdom lives down here. Like, the Buddhists believe that our deep inner wisdom lives in what's our hara, which is low down in the lowest part of our lower belly. And they call it this, like, still water, like water that cannot be, moved. Right. It's just this still, deep body of water that you can see your reflection, and you can see the truth about you and about all situations in your life. And so the work of embodied mindfulness is to connect to the body through meditation in order to fully embody not just what you're thinking, but to move down into your deep inner wisdom and connect that deep inner wisdom that knows, that's where you know things, with what you think up here or what you think you know up here.
Right.
And so that happens by entering a meditation, which I guide you through. And I use multiple things. I use music, usually tonal music that's at a specific frequency. I intuit what frequency the client wants, but I always ask, how does this sound for you? And then I use like a natural burning candle with essential oils. And I always ask the client, are you allergic to anything?
Right.
So whatever candle I burn, it's a clean burn. And if it bothers the client, we turn the candle off. And then I have a singing bowl or a sound, a singing bowl. A Tibetan singing bowl. And I just lead whatever meditation I intuit the client needs. And I always ask, like, how was that? How did that feel? And it's all so that they can drop into their bodies. Something that's really common for my clients. And they say that your client is you 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So every single one of my clients is very intellectual and very up in their heads, and they love to talk. And it takes a moment to get down into your deep inner wisdom and to connect with that deep inner wisdom to really get the answers that you're searching for, right?
Yeah.
So each one of my clients, we move into this meditation, we move down into the body, we often move down into the earth and grow energetic roots down into the earth. And we just breathe together, and I, again, intuitively guide them. And then when they end the meditation, they have the option to keep their eyes closed. A lot of us already feel really connected deep within. And if we open our eyes, we jump back into our minds.
Yes.
It's not that the mind isn't important. I love the quote by the Buddha, and I do believe this is an actual quote by the Buddha. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And in Western society, the mind is the master. And it's so helpful, the mind, but it's not where the deep inner wisdom lives.
Right.
So connecting with that deep inner wisdom that lives in the body, hence embodied mindfulness.
Right.
So mindfulness, as in you're connecting to what's happening in the mind, but now it's fully embodied, so that when you're in a situation in which, say, you're triggered, you can connect with that deep inner wisdom and be like, oh, hey, I'm triggered right now. Mom, something's going on. I got to get off the phone. I love you. Bye. So it's not, no longer, your guiding light is no longer what makes her happy and what's my job as the good daughter to stay on the phone and listen to absolutely everything she wants to tell me in the next 45 minutes while my nervous system is now in panic mode and my heart is beating and I can't think clearly, and in a moment I'm going to start yelling at her. Mm-hmm. That's not good for anybody. So that connection that I help clients, I support. I don't do the healing. I'm not the healer.
Yes.
The modality heals and the client receives.
Beautiful.
And usually they're receiving from that deep inner wisdom inside of them. I'm just supporting the process.
Right.
And so when you make that connection over and over again between the mind and the body, embodying, the mind and connecting with the deep inner wisdom in those moments when you are in a trigger, in a difficult situation, in a place where you need to set a boundary and make yourself the most important. My health and well-being are more important than anything else. The connection reminds you, oh, hey, this is where I can set a boundary without having to yell or scream or say, you're upsetting me and I can't talk to you anymore.
Yeah. Or worse.
Or worse.
Depending on where you're
at. Or maybe you use a couple curse words in Spanish. But so my sessions look like that. There's a beautiful meditation at the beginning, and it can be as short or as long as the client prefers. And then there's a series of questions that I ask that I'm asking them. Don't think about it. Answer with your gut.
Yeah.
Let your deep inner wisdom answer. So I'm going to ask you a weird question, and the first thing that comes to you is the answer. Yeah. And so many times they receive the answers that they've been looking for, but they're within them. I don't have the answers. Right. I just ask a series of questions.
Yes. You've created this space. They're in, like you said, they're connected.
Yes.
They're allowing that pure, highest truth to come through.
Yes.
You're holding them in that space so they can have that conversation with themselves. You're not telling them what it is. You're just literally holding that space for them.
I honestly don't know what it is most times.
or remember afterwards. I like when clients go, when in the beginning, what did I say? I'm like, I couldn't tell you now.
I do take, the writer in me from many years ago. I started writing as a third grader. I started my novel when I was in the third grade. I never finished that novel, to say the least. But I write a lot. Even if I never revisit what I write because it's a way that I take in information and that I embody information is through writing. So I have a sheet, and I always keep the sheets so that I'll refer back to them and be like, do you remember that you said that last week?
Lovely.
Like last time we met, that was really important to you, and here it is again.
That's wonderful.
I do remind them of what they've said, and then it also helps me to give them the homework that they need to do for whatever amount of time we won't be seeing each other. Yeah. And usually it's very individualized, so it doesn't have to involve meditation. If somebody is like, I don't meditate, it's not a problem. Really, the work that I do is focused on helping people find the thing, the process, the ritual, the activity, whatever it is, that is the way that they show themselves self-love, is the way they connect and fill their own cup. Yeah. And that's really my work. So I have musicians who create music. That's their homework. And I have psychologists who journal. And I have, I'm trying to think of all
writers
the different
who
types.
Write.
Or writers who hate writing. And the last thing they want to do is write. So they go on a walk.
Lovely.
And they stare at the trees and they look at the lake. And it's what works for you. What works for you? One of the questions I ask is, what is your resource? And sometimes the answer is as simple as this breath. This breath is my resource. And I said, how wonderful that that's your resource, because it's always with you.
All the time.
You can always depend on your breath.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
That's wonderful.
I hope that was...
You're wonderful. Do you notice when your healing, how does it change your coaching or your... how you're relating to your clients, as you're healing, the relationship between two? Because like you said, it's so true. I'll have a theme, the whole day, everyone comes to their appointment, they all are working on the same thing. And then I'm like, okay, let me see. Apparently this is a message for me.
So you also receive messages from clients.
Yeah, every appointment will be I think I want to work on self-worth today. And then the next person comes in, I'm like, what do you feel like working on today? I was really thinking about self-worth. I'm like, okay. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, all right, what am I needing to look at about this? Yeah, absolutely.
We're really, really connected. That's something that, is that's something I have learned. But as far as like my self-healing affecting the work that I do with people, the embodied mindfulness coaching and mentoring, and also even just teaching yoga and meditation, all those modalities are interwoven.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
The more I do the deep self-work with me, which means forgiving myself for not being perfect, which means forgiving myself for not pleasing the people I love the most, which means leaving places that I've worked for a long time because it's not serving me, because my whole life there has been about serving others. And now I'm in a stage of my life where I'm ready to serve myself. All of those things that have happened in my life just recently, just in the past year, they really shift my sessions. I find that my clients are more open to self-love. I find that they are making actually bigger strides. I find that the very same things that are happening to me are happening to them. They're shifting out of old relationships that aren't serving them. They're finally putting themselves first. They finally decided that it's not worth working that job for 12 hours, breaking your back, trying to make other people approve of you. The only person that matters is me. Like that I approve of myself. And I'm having clients do that, like finally breaking through that barrier of automaticity of always putting others first. And it's what I find, even in my own work, and my clients are finding this as well, is that the more I love myself, the more that I'm willing to hold myself in compassion. And I'm going to tell you a story in a minute that I feel like really speaks to this, because it sounds like this is easy peasy, and it's just not. This is the hardest work I've ever done in my life. And if you didn't catch that I almost started crying a minute ago, I did. I almost broke down. And it's not that crying isn't good. I just want to be able to continue to communicate really clearly that the more that I love myself, the more capacity I have to love others, the more capacity I have to give. That there is no end to my love. I can give myself what I need. I can be compassionate towards myself, and it actually creates more compassion for everyone else. It actually gives me more energy to provide more.
Yeah.
And so here's the story.
I love it.
So, wow. Okay. So recently, I stopped teaching at the yoga studio that I was there when it was founded, and worked all the way through 13 and a half years of the studio. And I recently felt like, well, all of my energy, all of my work, all of my sweat equity, everything I have was going into this space and into this community, which I love. I love this community. I will always love this community. But what I realized this year, actually in 2023, I realized this, and it took a whole year to release, to surrender, to loving myself fully and stepping away. What was I going to say? What I realized that because I was so automatically giving everything to that community, I wasn't working on the projects I wanted to work on. And they're projects that have been near and dear to my heart the whole 13 years I've taught yoga. It's what I wanted to do when I got out of teacher training, but I wasn't giving that project any attention. I wasn't building my own business because it was always about building that community. And it was like an addiction. It was like I couldn't, the minute I stepped into the space, I was giving it all. And so in 2023, I slowly began to step away from that community, very slowly. Finally, like giving my notice and teaching my last class. So here's the story. I had to tell that to tell you the story.
You need the background.
I've taught Sunday morning, Sweet Morning Flow. This has been my class since the day after I graduated teacher training in 2010.
Oh my gosh.
So a long time.
Yeah.
And so for about a month, I didn't teach it because I had left the studio and I wanted to see what would happen, how I would feel, how it would show up. And I finally decided I can't not teach on Sunday mornings. So I actually made a connection with a new wellness center owner. And she was like, yeah, I'd love to have you teach on Sunday mornings. And last Sunday was my first time teaching. And the class went amazing, and a lot of my students came, and they were excited about having me back, and it was such a beautiful class, and I was so happy. And then I got in my car, and I was like, that wasn't right. That wasn't my body, my physical body, not my deep inner wisdom.
Right.
My physical body, in other words, my nervous system. My nervous system, who has been driving to the same location, basically the same place for 13 and a half years, was like, you went to the wrong place. You did the wrong thing. You're not in the right place. And I started to feel really uncomfortable in my heart and in my chest. And I was driving to my favorite cafe, like I do every Sunday morning after I teach. And I said out loud, I don't want to feel this way. I don't like to feel this way. I don't like it. Can I push these emotions down? Can I ignore them? Is it okay? And then here came the deep inner wisdom, and she said, it's okay, honey. It's okay to feel this way. You love that other spot. You've been there so long, and this is a big change, and this place is beautiful too, and you love your students, and you love to teach, and it's going to take time. And it's okay to feel this way. It's okay. So when the hard work, it's easy, believe it or not, to like prepare, to put your hand on your heart. It's easy to take that time in the mornings and watch the sunrise compared to what it feels like when you're in the trenches and you have that old reaction and you just want to go back to that old pattern that you know was not serving you. Again, you know it's not serving you, but your nervous system is like, but I just want to go back to what I know. Just take me back to what I know. And then the deep inner wisdom comes in and she tells you that it's okay. You know, they say, it's okay to feel this way. It's even okay to feel like you want to shove the feelings down. But is that going to serve you? And I was like, no, it's going to come up in an uncomfortable way at the wrong time. I'm going to end up yelling at someone I know or I love because I'm hurt and I haven't allowed myself to feel that. So
that's so beautiful.
It's big.
Thank you for sharing that, because I know you as teaching that Sunday morning class too, and I know that had to have been a really hard thing to leave and then to process those emotions in a new space. So, and kind of supporting what we've been talking about, this like intuitive, divine, support. Even within this interaction, you have been sort of anticipating questions, I think, intuitively receiving where you should go. Because as I'm thinking, like, I'm going to ask her this, you would kind of go into a suggestion or a story or something where I'm like, well, she answered that. And then I would like, oh, go to the next thing. And then you would, so even within this, you're really just so connected with the flow of the divine. It just,
on the good days,
even just in this simple thing, you're really like, and I just think it's going to help so many people, because I think also you're connected to that, like what they need to hear in this podcast even.
Most of the time people just need a space to be themselves. And
that it's okay to be themselves.
Oh my gosh, it's so okay. And that's really what my embodied mindfulness coach, Karina Nickerson, taught me. She taught me that it was okay to be myself, and that it didn't matter where I was or how I was sitting, or if I sat the way that all the Zen Buddhists sit, or if I sat the way that the Tibetan Buddhists sit, that it didn't matter. Sorry, I just bleeped myself. It didn't matter that, oh, honey, so many times she looked at me and she said, oh, honey, it is okay to eat that piece of pizza. You go instead of meditation. Go eat that pizza. Like, love yourself in the way that you need to be loved in that moment. Hold your heart and tell yourself, like, you are wonderful exactly as you are, even in these moments when you don't feel wonderful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of those stories. I appreciate you and you taking the time to be here, but also what you're doing for your community and our community, because we live in the same space. I just know we've known each other for so long, even though we met in such brief ways over time. And I just feel like even within that, you've made differences for me. You've made differences for people I know, and you continue to be like a very strong presence in our community. And I just appreciate you for what you're doing.
Thank you. I really love what I do.
You can tell, and that's like what we want, right? To do what we love.
Exactly.
So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Laura.
Yeah. So we always end the podcast on like a silly, light
note. Yeah, let's do it.
Where we ask the void a question.
Yeah. Oh yes, please. Can we ask the void a question?
I always give. If you would like, you could ask anything, or I'll come up with the question if you're.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay, just ask the void and it will answer.
Void.
Yes. And then just ask your question.
Okay. What's your favorite tree?
Oak.
Beautiful. Strong. Deep roots. Reaching for the sky. I love it.
I love it. Before we end, I just wanted to bring up just another, divine moment. So we have Seva tea here that we always give to our guests and that I drink. And when I was preparing for today and I was thinking, what, flavor of tea should I serve for you? And I connected intuitively and I thought, well, make us both the same. But then I was guided, no, it has to be different. And mine has to be Tulsi and yours has to be Sacred Heart. And then when you came and I offered it to you, you were talking about how like you're doing so much today about your heart and heart opening things. And so it just was another moment of support that we're being guided on, that we're in the place we're supposed to be, doing the things we're supposed to be doing. So I love that.
Thank you so much.
So we'll have Marlene's contact information in the description below. But thank you, healer, for joining us today. I wish you joy and serendipity on your healing journey, and I hope our paths cross again.
Yes.